Hello, and welcome to Taste of Vase. This is Chef Amy coming to you from her home kitchen today, and what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the magic of sheet pan suppers. At the end of the video today, you'll find a packet with 3 recipes in it, but the one I wanted to focus on is the Parmesan crunchy chicken breast with roasted tomatoes. This one's beautiful. It follows the true art form of the sheet pan supper, was to be able to put everything on one sheet and be able to pull dinner out of the hat magically anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes later and have everything you need to make a complete meal. So what do you say we get started? The first thing I'd like you to do is find the sheet pan. So that pan that you actually cook your cookies on is called a sheet pan. I'm going to ask that you line it with aluminum foil. The reason for the aluminum foil is twofold. One is, as you can see by this one that I've already done for you, one is specifically to create a nice metallic shiny surface that's going to give us beautiful caramelization on these breadcrumbs later. And the second secret reason is, hey, the whole idea is this is an easy meal. Cleanup should be just as easy. So now that I've done that, what I'd like to talk about a little bit is our chicken breasts. You're going to need 2 pounds of chicken to be able to feed 4 individuals. A 2-pound package of chicken may have 3 breasts in it. It may have 4, depending on the size of those chickens. The one that I opened earlier today had 3 chicken breasts. So you're going to see 2 here and 1 later when I show you what the finished product looks like. So I've got one that I've actually treated already, and I'd like to get started on the second. The first thing we're going to do is we're simply going to use a coarse sea salt to give a nice sprinkle to our chicken. The second is a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. I keep these out on my counter all the time. I just prefer the open container versus the closed container. What you'll notice here are beautiful calamari or pearl tomatoes. You may not be familiar with these, but they're absolutely wonderfully delicious. Really tastes like summer kind of a tomato. What we're going to do is we're going to make these into something magical because when they roast, they become jammy and full of additional flavor. So what I'm going to do is simply place it right here next to my chicken breast. Nobody panic yet. This is going to be baked, so I'm not having a cross-contamination issue with my raw chicken. What we're going to do is we're going to step over here and I'm going to get my olive oil. The olive oil I'm using today is a higher end olive oil, and the reason I'm going to suggest that you invest in a little bit of good olive oil is for dishes like this where they're simple, our ingredients need to be at the top of the line. A good olive oil does not have bitterness to it, so it really enhances the flavors that you're looking for. I'm going to do a simple drizzle of our olive oil right over the top. You won't find a specific measure for this in your recipe. This is an eyeball. Just get something for that salt and pepper to be able to stick to. I'm going to go back to that coarse sea salt, and I want you to be generous with this. These are sweet, and this beautiful salt is going to bring up the sweetness, and you're really going to enjoy the outcome of that. A little bit of pepper, and we're done with this phase of the recipe. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and we get started on the next 2 components, which again are equally as easy. What you'll notice here is I've got a tablespoon of beautiful Dijon mustard and a tablespoon of mayonnaise. Why the mayonnaise, you might ask? Simple enough. Chicken is a lean protein, but as a lean protein, it can tend to be very dry and often quite flavorless. So this is a sneaky way to get in just a little bit of flavor through that fat, and give the dish the what is that moment that your family and friends may not recognize. So I'm just going to combine these 2 things. It doesn't have to be a big dish after all, right? We've got small measurements here. We're going to mix that up just that quickly. See? No big deal. I'm going to set that aside. Step 2 done. We're ready for step 3. Step 3 is to use 1/4 cup of panko breadcrumbs. They're these coarse, beautiful breadcrumbs that I'm going to suggest you use rather than an Italian breadcrumb. The Italian breadcrumbs just don't hold their texture the way I want this one to. So we're going to use 1/4 cup of those. I've got a sample box for you in case it is helpful when you go grocery shopping later. Not necessarily endorsing this brand, but saying this is generally what they look like, and you can find them in 2 places in the grocery store, both in the baking aisle as well as on the ethnic foods aisle. So to that, I'm going to add 1/4 cup grated Parmesan cheese. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of onion powder to give it that something extra flavor. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of olive oil, some of that good olive oil again. You could buy any kind. I'm just letting you know there's just a little bitterness to the ones that are a little less expensive. And our last ingredient for this portion of the topping is one teaspoon of chopped minced garlic. In this instance, I've used the kind that comes in a jar, and the reason for that is this is about ease. If you have some garlic at home, please use it. Mince it up nice and fine because this isn't in the oven very long, so we want to make sure that it's as fine as it can get because we don't want to run the risk of somebody biting into raw garlic. Our last ingredient that goes to the top of this is our Italian flat leaf parsley. Italian flat leaf parsley is actually my preferred parsley. It doesn't have that grassy, soapy taste that I find with the curly leaf. I think of that more as a garnish for a sandwich plate in a deli versus something to add flavor. It actually looks leafy, somewhat a lot alike cilantro, but it's not. It has very different flavor. I'm going to set some of this aside because later I'm going to want to be able to use it for the garnish for my actual dish later. Just my standard kitchen knife, and just going to do a quick chop. What I'm looking for is just a teaspoon of this because I'm just looking for that color variation that's going to make a beautiful difference for me later. And in it goes. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for now. I'm going to mix simply with a fork. Can't get much easier than this. As you notice, it comes together very, very quickly. We're so far ahead of the game, it's not even funny at this point. Now I'm going to take that prepared chicken breast that we've got resting over here, and assembly begins. So what we're up to is we're going to take some of this beautiful mixture that we put together earlier and just smear it beautifully all over that chicken breast. Not heavily, because remember this measurement is going to go across 4 chicken breasts or 2 full pounds of chicken breast. This is what it looks like. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a sprinkle of this beautiful crumb topping. On it goes. I'm not looking for a super heavy coating. This isn't fried chicken. It's a crunchy, crispy top. And this whole mixture will be divided against 4 of your chicken breasts. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get it into that preheated 450-degree oven. And in 12 minutes, we should be done. It's important that you use that digital thermometer we talked about last week. Chicken should always be cooked to 165 degrees. So here we go. In the oven it's going to go. To do its thing for the next 12 to 14 minutes. But through the magic of television, I of course have already gone ahead and made one of these just for you, hoping that I could have lunch with you today. So let's get this plated. But first, let me rinse my hands before I do that. Just a quick kitchen note for kitchen safety. As you're working in the kitchen, it's a good idea to have a fresh supply of paper towels sitting with you. Don't use a cloth towel to keep drying your hands because all you're doing is taking whatever on your hands and transferring it to the cloth. Use those paper towels. So next, let's plate. The plate that I've got to use for us today is one of my favorite plates here in the household, kind of a fancier way to actually plate anything. Again, this is all about ease, so if you decide you want to use a paper plate, good on you, no problem at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this onto our serving dish. This one is, as you can see, look at how beautifully golden brown this is. Inviting and yummy, thick and juicy. Plate. I'm going to take these beautiful tomatoes. Look at these guys. They've roasted, they popped just a little bit, caramelized. I can't wait to see what this is going to taste like. Right next to my chicken. Put that aside. And remember we reserved some of that parsley earlier. Now is the part where I make it look fancy. There we go. Not hard to do at all. And voila, you have an absolutely beautiful sheet pan dinner that took us all of 20 minutes or so to be able to put together. For this recipe as well, I almost dropped it, for this recipe as well as the other 2 recipes I mentioned earlier, a roasted asparagus and salmon, and our second recipe, which is an Italian sausage, pepper, and potato dish, which is one of my husband's favorites. That recipe actually gives you 2 ways to serve it. So have a great week. Pay attention at the end of the video. It'll tell you where you can go to get these recipes. And secondly, it'll give you a location for you to be able to send us a note on what you'd like to learn next. So this is Chef Amy signing off. Have a great week. And remember, have fun and play with your food.